Before we start, we would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are occupying land in Peterborough, Nogojinawong on the Treaty 20 territory and traditional territory of the Mississauga Anishinaabeg. This land is associated with the Williams Treaty. We offer our gratitude to the First Nations for their care for and teachings about our earth and our relations. May we honor those teachings.
Hi everyone, this is your Champlain College ambassadors, Chloe
and Chloe,
and you are listening to Chamily Drama, broadcasting through the facilities of CFFF Trent Radio at 92.7 FM in Peterborough, Nogojinawong, Canada. Hello everyone and welcome back to Chamily Drama. This is Season 6, Reflect, and it is the second episode. Woo. First off, before we start, we're just going to give you a couple of announcements about what's coming up this week.
Yeah, so first, really quick shout out to everybody that came out to Drag Bingo. As well, we want to give a huge thank you to our two lovely queens, Banshee Whalen and Lexi Moore. We had so much fun. You guys just did such an amazing job performing. It was a huge success. That was the most people we've ever had out to Bingo. So thank you so much for doing that with us and just for making it such a memorable event.
Next coming up is the holiday event. That's going to be happening on December 2nd. It's going to include arts, crafts, maybe some ornament making, a hot chocolate bar, maybe a photo booth if you're lucky, as well as we're also going to have some clubs and groups coming and sharing a little bit about their organization and what they do, and also hosting some activities as well.
Another really exciting event that's coming up next week that I know we are personally super excited for is the Mac and Cheese Smackdown on November 29th. So this is going to be from 11:30 to 2 p.m. in the Great Hall, and it's going to be a competition between the Trend, the KWIC, the Seasoned Spoon, as well as our Trent University food staff, making different types of mac and cheese for you to taste test for free, might I add. So make sure to come out, try all the mac and cheese, get all cheesed up, bring your Lactaid if you're lactose intolerant like me. And there's different categories as well. So there will be classic mac and cheese, loaded mac and cheese, as well as vegan mac and cheese. And the winners will be crowned around 2:30 p.m. All right, everyone, now we're gonna get into the bulk of what this episode is gonna be about. So just before we start discussing anything, we wanna give a brief trigger warning because we are going to be discussing pretty heavy topics surrounding gender-based violence. Here's your trigger warning right now. So please, if any of these topics make you uncomfortable in any way, just skip this episode and we'll see you next week.
All right, so this week we're going to be talking about gender-based violence, and we're going to be talking about the different supports on and off campus that can assist people who are having challenges with gender-based violence, as well as we're going to have an interview with Sam from the Kawartha World Issues Centre, who's going to talk a little bit more about some initiatives that are going on to help people with gender-based violence. So first we're going to start off with just maybe a little bit of an explanation about what gender-based violence is. So gender-based violence is acts of violence inflicted on people because of their gender. Any person can experience or perpetuate gender-based violence. However, women are the most common victims of this kind of violence. Gender-based violence includes anything like psychological violence, stalking, physical violence, sexual assault, and hate speech as well.
So the reason we're talking about this topic this week is because it is Women's Abuse Awareness Month. And so we thought that this would be a really important topic to touch on for this month because, like we said, women are the most common victims of gender-based violence, and so it's very relevant to what's currently going on.
And just to clarify for everyone, when we're talking about gender-based violence, this is not any act of violence that is directed towards women or men. The act must be correlated to sexist perspectives. So in order for violence to be considered gender-based violence, it has to have that aspect of sexism, gender at the center of it.
Now we're going to have our interview with Sam from Kawartha World Issues Centre.
Thank you so much, Sam, for joining us. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and what Kawartha World Issues Centre is?
Yes. So hi, my name's Sam Rockburn. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the executive director at Kawartha World Issues Centre. A little bit about myself. So before working with KWIC, I completed my Master's of Arts in Sociolegal Studies from York University, and I focused my research on campus anti-sexual violence policies, specifically college policies. And then as well, something just kind of relevant to this is that in 2018, I co-founded a national nonprofit called Students for Consent Culture Canada, and that organization really focuses on ending campus sexual violence across Canada, as well as promoting cultures of consent. Kawartha World Issues Centre, or KWIC, is a charitable organization that connects global issues to local initiatives. We create opportunities that can change how people understand the world and foster equitable and sustainable communities. We make change happen through 3 key program areas, which are community education, such as our Sustainable Development Goals forums, reports, and our Gender Equality Project, which we will talk at length a bit later. Our other things such as Nogo Juwanong Peterborough Climate Action Network. Our next pillar is youth and school programs, which are our SDG classroom workshops, Teach Outside the Box teacher placement program, and then finally our third pillar is umbrella support for small and emerging projects. Some current projects include TRACS, which is the Trent Aboriginal Cultural Knowledges and Sciences program, Sustainable Trent, and Trent Oxfam, which are both levy groups, and other past examples, which include Green Up, YLS, Reframe Film Festival. We can be found in our KWIC Center, which stands for Education, Youth, and Environment, and we're nestled in the Environmental Sciences building at Trent University, so ESCB 101.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Do you think you could just explain to us what gender-based violence is?
Yes. So gender-based violence is a big term. It's hard to even think about it just in terms of like everything that's included, but it is defined as harmful acts directed at an individual based on their gender. It's rooted in gender inequality and the abuse of power and harmful norms. So this can include sexual, physical, mental, and economic harm inflicted in public or in private, and it also includes threats of violence, coercion, and manipulation. It can take many forms, so as I mentioned, really big, broad definition. So it includes things such as intimate partner violence, or it used to be called domestic violence, sexual violence, child marriage, female genital mutilation, and then so-called honor crimes. But that's just the tip of the iceberg in terms of how it's defined.
And would you be able to explain what the importance of women's abuse awareness as well as awareness around gender-based violence is?
So I think to start, probably good to acknowledge, so November is Women Abuse Awareness Month, and then we are also just at the start of the 16 Days of Activism, which will kick off on November 25th. So both of those are some pretty big gender-based violence, women abuse awareness events. And these come out of the need, if you don't name something and you don't raise awareness of it, you can't change it. So in order to make that change, we need to be raising awareness. We need to take action to educate and prevent, and we need to be able to respond when it happens. So these are usually requiring big system changes, which is how we have these awareness days or action days. But system change takes a lot of time. It's not something that happens overnight. In my undergrad and in my grad degree, I spent a lot of time researching these changes in law because both my degrees focused on law. And if you're going through that aspect, it can take decades upon decades just to get a single court case done, for example. So having these awareness dates are a place that we can spend some time thinking about the issues and start to work towards action and have awareness raised. And it's hard to do culture shifts. And that's really what we're trying to talk about doing for these issues.
And so you mentioned the 16 Days of Activism. Could you just explain further about what that is?
Yes. So it's officially called the 16 Days of Activism Against Gender-Based Violence. And it's an annual international campaign that begins on November 25th. So it is this Friday. And it goes, which is the International Day for Elimination of Violence Against Women, and it goes until December 10th, which is the World Human Rights Day. The campaign started in 1991 to call out and speak up about gender-based violence and to renew our commitment, and this is from a UN definition, to ending violence against women, girls, and 2S LGBTQI plus individuals. So it's a pretty big international engagement, and it really does focus across the globe. Here in Canada, we also recognize an additional day, we observe December 6th, which is the National Day of Remembrance and Action on Violence Against Women. And this is done in order to remember the women that were murdered during the tragic mass shooting of the Polytechnique Montreal and to put forward action to prevent future violence against women. That one holds a very, as someone who's on a campus, like a very heavy and important spot, as it was violence against women on a university campus and the idea that they don't belong in a university campus and in the specific program they're in. So I definitely encourage folks listening to research more about that and learn about December 6th.
And would you be able to tell us if there's a theme for this year's 16 Days of Activism?
Yeah, so I am going to talk about the Canada theme. There's also United Nations theme, but the Canada one feels like something that I just want to dive into a bit more today. So for 2022, the Government of Canada's theme is It's Not Just, which is a weird thing to say out loud, and I was reading it and I was also a little confused, but the theme has a double meaning. So it reminds Canadians of the injustice of gender-based violence and brings attention to how society dismisses and minimizes attitudes and behaviors contributing towards gender-based violence. It also highlights how gender-based violence is not just a private issue, but a systemic cycle that all Canadians have a role in ending. It's not just ask all Canadians to take action against gender-based violence by addressing the beliefs and behaviors that perpetuate violence. And I do want to add kind of my own piece here is that it really does require an intersectional aspect to it as well. So it's not just has a different aspect for folks depending on their identities. So for a racialized woman or for someone in the 2S LGBTQ plus group or for folks with disabilities, it's not just has a different application. And I'm sure we've all heard it's just in our lives. So it really is important to dig into that and kind of unpack it a bit more.
Hi everyone. Once again, this is your Champlain College Ambassadors, Chloe
And Chloe.
and you're listening to Chamily Drama, broadcasting through the facilities of CFFF Trent Radio at 92.7 FM in Peterborough, Nogojidawang, Canada.
And how could somebody get involved in the 16 Days of Activism?
There are a ton of different ways. So the big one, especially for folks that are maybe new to learning about activism and new to the 16 Days of Activism, is just finding an event or program that aligns with what you're interested in and how you want to engage in gender-based violence or anti-gender-based violence activism. So as mentioned, intersectionality is a huge piece of exploring and understanding gender-based violence, but it also applies to achieving gender equality. And there's many different ways that you can dive into issues. So some connections that I was thinking of before this interview was the connection between environmentalism and feminism, or environmentalism and gender equality, food security, racial justice, disability justice, and more. So finding kind of your area and how you want to approach it. In terms of specific ways to get involved, the big one would be to attend a December 6th vigil or attend an event for November 25th or attend an event on December 10th, which we have an event for December 10th. So we'll talk about that more in a little bit. Otherwise, just learn more and share your learnings with others. So breaking down the stigma around gender-based violence, learning how to become an active bystander, for example, that's a huge one, especially on campuses across Canada that's encouraged, but just being able to educate yourself and then educate others.
And is Kawartha World Issues Centre hosting any events or workshops to help raise awareness about gender-based violence?
We are. So we have 3 that are going to be coming up during the 16 Days of Activism. So on Tuesday, November 29th, we are hosting a virtual quick conversation with Kawartha Sexual Assault Centre, or KSAC, on gender-based violence, intersectionality, and human trafficking locally. Quick conversations are an hour-long program. They happen from 2 to 3 p.m. on Tuesdays, and it's a time for folks both who are brand new to a topic or maybe have a little bit more knowledge and experience in a topic to join us. These conversations usually range in terms of topics, but because of the 16 days, we decided to choose this one. On November 30th, and this isn't very preliminary, right after this, I'm actually hopping into a meeting about it. We are co-hosting a student research event with KSAC and Consent at Trent. So it's an opportunity for students who are doing research around gender-based violence or other kind of topics related to it to come and talk about their research and have it spotlighted. So definitely encourage folks, especially in undergrad classes, to come join us for that event. And then finally, as mentioned, on World Human Rights Day, which is December 10th, we're hosting a hybrid kind of in-person and virtual Chiapas Solidarity event with a few different organizations in the community. That event will bring a Indigenous woman who is an activist in Chiapas, Mexico, to speak about their experiences on the increased paramilitarization in Chiapas and what that impact has had on Indigenous communities and especially Indigenous women. Outside of the 16 Days of Activism, because I think it's something important to note, KWIC does a ton of work on gender equality. So we've done this through a couple of different programs and events. So each year we host on March 8th an International Women's Day free community gathering. So this year we are hoping to have that in person. We have some really great plans in place and more details will be released shortly. We are always looking for volunteers as well for National Women's Day. So if someone wants to kind of dip their toes in and get involved, it's a great way to do so. In the past, we have also conducted gender equality projects, such as our Advancing Gender Equality in Nogojidawang Peterborough project. So that one was a year-long project in which we engaged diverse individuals in workshop groups to talk about what the definition of gender equality is here locally, but also how we can achieve it locally. We're hoping that we'll be able to announce shortly some upcoming gender equality projects. We just have to wait until the funding decisions have been released, and we'll have some really cool ones going on in the new year.
Awesome. And can you tell us of any other organizations or initiatives in Peterborough that can assist people with gender-based violence challenges?
Yes. So there are a ton, which is such a great thing to see, to know that there's a lot of folks doing work on these issues. So my first thing that I just want to highlight is that I encourage folks in our Advancing Gender Equality in Nogojidawang Peterborough project, we were part of the Equal Futures Network, and in that they have a Gender Equality Achieving Equal Futures Network map that showcases both in Peterborough but across Canada different organizations working to achieve gender equality. So for folks that are not immediately in crisis, I definitely recommend checking that out, playing around with it, seeing who does work where. In terms of direct support or needing some support for gender-based violence, there's a few organizations that came to mind. The first one was Kawartha Sexual Assault Centre, or KSAC. They have a crisis line as well that I would encourage folks, if you are in immediate crisis and need some sort of support, definitely reach out. But crisis lines are also great if you're not immediately in support, but you just want someone to talk to or you want to learn more about resources. So that would be one that I would recommend. There are other organizations in the community, and this is like not a full list. There are tons more that I probably did not include, but ones that came to mind were YWCA, Nisha Kawinda, Women's Healthcare Center, the John Howard Society, CMHA, One City Circles of Support and Accountability, Elizabeth Fry Society, and the Nogojiwanong Friendship Center. And then because we are on Trent's campus, there are also a few Trent-specific resources. So some of these would be Consent at Trent, Counseling Services, First People's House of Learning, Student Health Services, and Housing Services, to name a few.
And would you be able to describe the goal of the Gender Equity Project that you were talking about earlier?
Yeah. So our project, Advancing Gender Equality in Nogojiwanong, Peterborough, which is a mouthful of a topic or a title, but I think really does encapsulate what we were aiming for. It builds upon our previous SDG work. So starting, I believe, in about 2019, 2020, we started hosting community forums on sustainable development goals that were developed by the UN, or SDGs. So these ones focused in on, I believe it was 4 different areas, and there was one around Indigenous leadership as well. From that, KWIC wanted to really highlight gender equality, and that's one that we've been working on for years and that we wanted to be able to dive deeply into. So that's where this project came out of. So this was brought by funding from the Gender Equality Fund that is also provided by the Community Foundation of Greater Peterborough. Huge shout out to them and all of their support. During this project, we were able to engage, as mentioned, local diverse community members in 6 workshop discussions to learn more about gender equality locally and also share about the history of gender equality in Canada and globally. So this project was both kind of twofold in sense of we were learning from our participants, but then also passing along knowledge that we had. And that's really a kind of core value of KWIC, is using popular education models. In this project, we learned a lot about intersectionality and gender, local definitions of gender equality, local experiences of gender equality, and then current gaps to advancing gender equality. This project really focused on kind of 3 main frameworks. So it was centering Indigenous leadership, and that's one that was at the core of the project. The principle of leave no one behind, which is part of the UN SDGs, and then intersectionality. Finally, the project and the final report touched upon broad areas and ways to achieve gender equality here in Peterborough. But I think those are really just first steps and big things, because as we mentioned, we're looking for a culture shift, not just something that'll happen overnight.
What did the report conclude about gender equality?
So the report demonstrated that while there is a lot happening in Peterborough to kind of advance gender equality and be working on it, there's still a long way to go. So many of these issues or concerns brought forward are structural and systemic. So these are ones that we heard with long histories and intersections of marginalization. So again, we're looking for a culture shift and we're looking to really make that systemic change. And it's going to take quite a bit of work from a lot of different folks. In the final report for the project, we were able to identify 5 key areas for further engagement and learning, which are gender-based violence, equal pay and opportunities, equal leadership opportunities, sexual and reproductive health, and unpaid care and domestic work. And these were brought forward by all the groups that we were talking to. So we're hoping to continue to explore these areas in the future and start individual conversations on gender equality while advocating for and working towards structural change. So it really is that twofold approach of individuals as well as making that structural piece.
Awesome. That's great. Well, thank you so much. I think that's all our questions we have. But yeah, I just want to say thank you again for sharing all that really, really valuable knowledge with us.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely encourage everyone to follow and check out KWIC. We will have a ton of stuff happening over the next little while. We have, as I mentioned, a bunch of projects that'll be announced in the new year that I just not allowed to talk about just yet, but I'm like very excited internally, and I'm hoping that's coming across to folks so they can learn how to get involved.
Thanks so much, Sam, for that amazing interview and for giving us so much information about the 16 Days of Activism and gender-based violence. Now, just to end off this episode, we're going to go into a few reminders and what's going on next week.
So for reminders, we have that holiday event coming up on December 2nd. Please make sure that you do register. There's a link on the Student Experience portal. Register so that we do know that you're coming, and we can't wait to see you guys there.
As well, another reminder, we have the Mac and Cheese Smackdown coming up. You do not have to register for this event. It is completely free, drop-in style. It's next Tuesday, November 29th from 11:30 to 2 p.m. in the Great Hall.
Coming up next week, we are going to be discussing exam tips and study preparation, as well as we're going to be having an interview with one of our academic skills instructors, Susan Thompson.
Yes, and as always, please like and subscribe. And thank you so much for listening.
Bye! Thanks for listening. This has been your Champlain College ambassadors, Chloe
And Chloe.
and you are listening to Chamily Drama, broadcasting through the facilities of CFFF Trent Radio 92.7 FM in Peterborough, Nogojinawong, Canada.